I think the first year I called in it, I actually was in a call off for the last spot. And you want to talk about nerve wracking? That was nerve wracking. It was a 3-way tie.
Hunter, are you there?
Sorry about that, guys. I don't know what it said. It shut off because of my temperature got too high on the phone.
I'm really enjoying this energy drink.
Your energy is through the roof.
I'm having fun.
That's the whole thing of it. When it stops being fun, it's no fun anymore.
That's where Tim and I are.
Yeah.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Drury Outdoors 100% Wild podcast, powered by DeerCast. This is a special Young Guns edition.
That's right.
Turkey season.
You're
special.
Tim Shelsvik.
You're Matt Drury.
We have special guest host
Steven Stoltz.
the SS special.
Dang.
So, Steve, this is a fun series. We talked about it. I introduced it last week. I'm going to quick highlight the series one more time as we get into it for those that may not have listened to the first episode. If you haven't, go back an episode and listen to the Bo Brooks episode. Fun episode, great guy, had a lot of cool information, I thought, throughout the episode about not just the social side, the influencing side, but really some great strategy, calling tips, everything in between for what you can do to try to kill a turkey this spring.
Absolutely. Bo is so energetic and such a talented turkey caller and just game caller. He all game.
That's right.
And you need to look Bo up, look that show up, the show previous to this, and you'll enjoy it.
Okay, so what we're trying to do here, high level. Last year, we did a series called the Longbeard Legend Series. Had the great Ray I on as a co-host, but we had guys like Will Primos and Cuz Strickland and Ernie Calandrelli, Chris Kirby, Ron Jolly. Great guests. But that was about some of those that paved the way for the new generation. And I wanted to take the opposite end of that spectrum this year and go with a Young Guns series. Who's that next generation that's going to help fill the void as we, continue on? Who's going to help introduce new hunters with new medium like TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and all these great things that we have at our fingertips? But how are we teaching people, right?
Right. Yeah, so this week we've got Hunter Wallis on. So Hunter is he's a 9-time Grand National. He's got 9 Grand National calling titles, 2 World Championships. He's got 2 U.S. Opens to his credit, 10 Pennsylvania State Championships. He completed his first Grand Slam at the age of 12. Has completed several more now at the young age of 23 years old.
I'm exhausted. Are you only 23, Hunter?
I'm actually 26. I don't know where that one came from. It must have been from a couple years ago.
I'm still exhausted.
You look like
That's
you're
all right.
23. Jeez.
I'm still exhausted.
Boyish.
That's a long list. When did you get started in this industry, man?
Oh, man. I've been calling a turkey calling contest since as long as I can remember, probably 5-6 years old. I kind of took a little bit of a break at it. And then I'd say when I was 9 or 10, I kind of really got into the contest scheme. I kind of got into blowing mouth calls a little bit more. And my first contest I ever won was actually a county fair, and that one kind of fueled the fire. And ever since then, I started doing some state competitions and started being a little bit more successful and went to the Grand Nationals. First year I went to the Grand Nationals, I didn't do any good. And then the second year I went back, I think it was 2011, I won my first junior title. And from there, it's been a real passion of mine, man. I've loved every minute of it and keep going with it.
Hunter, real quick, as you progressed in your turkey calling career, so to speak, was there anybody that influenced and helped you kind of build to the point that you're a top caller today?
Say Steve Stoltz.
Totally. Yeah, totally, man. Josh Grossenbacher, I wouldn't be anywhere in the turkey calling thing if it wasn't for him. He's built all my calls. He still builds all my calls. I'm not really a call builder. He builds all my calls for me. Man, we've had countless hours. I can remember being 11, 12 years old, and I'd call him every night of the week in January and February leading up to the Grand Nationals, and he'd go over every single routine with me, as far as how to cadence and timing and everything like that. And, if it wasn't for Josh, I wouldn't be anywhere in it. So I definitely have to thank
we're
him.
Big fans of Josh Grossenbacher ourselves. I wish I could call like him.
Yeah, so he was on a short, like you guys, I mentioned it off air, you guys were on a very short list of names that Steve and Mark both gave us as hey, these guys are the guys that you want to interview. So when you talk about the cadence, And for those listening or watching, we're going to get into all kinds of stuff. We're going to get into tips and tactics and real life stuff in the turkey woods. But I want to stick on the calling circuit part just for the moment, for the time being. So when you talk about cadence, I always find that interesting. Is there not a surefire way, but is there like a road to success in getting higher scores and getting kind of a higher grade with the judges in regards to the cadence that you put forth or how you go about your strategy leading into a calling competition? Like that's fascinating to me, that world.
Absolutely, man. I think, your cadence is probably one of the biggest things when it comes down to it. I mean, your overall sound is huge, but when I was really young, just starting out, I think I had a really good sound for a young guy, but my biggest problem was figuring out how to put it together. And, like I said, Josh kind of helped me figure all that out. And, cadence, it's everybody does things a little bit different, but when it comes to a calling contest, and Steve will tell you, there's just kind of some golden rules with cadence. You run your fly down cackle, almost everybody does it twice. An assembly call, obviously you have to have a lot more notes in it than you would a plain yelp, anything like that. It's key in being successful in calling contests. Absolutely. You got to have your cadence down pat. Well,
Hunter, again, big fan of your calling skills, especially on stage. It seems like you, for lack of better terms, step it up when it comes to competing in competition. Tiger Woods was that way with golf. He stepped up his game in majors and sometimes didn't play near as good in regular golf tournaments. How did you incorporate that realism? I love how you put the little tiny in-between notes that nobody else is doing. It's so real turkey. It's so real live turkey. How did you learn? And did you learn that from live turkeys, or did you learn that from somebody teaching you, or a combination of?
I would say it's definitely a combination of it. I mean, as you well know, the competition now in the Grand Nationals especially is probably the highest it's ever. I mean, everybody that's up on that stage, especially in the finals, I mean, the prelims too, the calling is, I think, better than it's ever been. I mean, it's just unbelievable. You listen to the finals, everybody up there sounds so much like a turkey. It's crazy.
Absolutely.
And I think something that everybody kind of started to figure out, whether they were, I don't want to say copying each other, but learning from each other, was to add in these little things to set yourself apart, like the little whines and the little bubble clucks in your tree yelps, or like I said, whines and cluck and purrs, and just different things to make it more turkey and make yourself stand out. I think we've learned that from turkeys, but I think we kind of go off of one another. A couple of years ago, I'd say maybe 10 years ago, everybody started doing the thing with the soft keys, and then kind of going into louder keys, and then back with the soft keys, and it just kind of became a staple. So I think a lot of that stuff is kind of, honestly, one guy probably starts doing it, and then it kind of starts trending among the crowd. But you learn off of other people, and then you kind of get your own style and incorporate it into your routine. And obviously a lot of it comes from turkeys, but I think a lot of times one guy will have one really good idea, and most guys kind of copy off that. But regardless, any of that little stuff that you could add in there to make yourself stand out just that much more is huge.
So I was going to say, you mentioned all the guys that are in the finals, and they're all top level, right? They're peak performance. Does that make it even more incredible what a guy like Van Cise is doing, and winning at that high level, that high stage, like kind of over and over and over? Does that make it, you guys would know. I don't know. Does it make it more incredible that he's able to do something like that? Well,
Hunter, and I think you'll agree, Matt's results, and this isn't a show specifically about Matt, but hey, you can't deny Matt probably puts more time and effort into his calling skills on stage in his presentation than any caller alive right now, and the results show.
Absolutely, man. I mean, I know I'm guilty of not practicing nearly as much as I should. And, you see the guys that really, really put a ton of time into it. I mean, I'll get a good set of calls, and I'll try to keep them for 2 or 3 years. I think Van Cise or Jesse Martin, those guys are probably building calls every single solitary day.
They do.
And running them, and finding the best thing for them. And, a good set of calls is key, but these guys probably have just, more than they can hold in their wallet. They're building every day. They're practicing every day and trying to get better every day. I mean, up until a couple of years ago, Van Sice, I remember I don't think he could fighting. And all of a sudden now, I think a year or two later, I mean, he fighting purrs as good as anybody up there. So it's unbelievable the time that he puts into it. And, Matt Van Sice is just probably the best they'll ever be. It's incredible.
No question.
He does.
So real quick, your track record in the senior division of the Grand Nationals, when did you turn from intermediate caller to senior division caller?
It would have been, I believe, 2019 was my first one in the seniors. And then we had 2020 where there was no convention that year
because of COVID.
Yeah. But for my first, I guess this would have been my fifth year, and I've been lucky enough to make the cut every year. I have not placed, but I have made the cut every year, which I'm happy about. For sure, I'd like to see myself in the top 5. I mean, I'd like to see myself win it one day, obviously, as we all would. But I'm definitely happy with the fact that every year I've been in the seniors, I've at least been able to make it to the finals. That's a good feeling.
That's an incredible record. You were coming out from junior and then intermediate, and as soon as you get to senior division, you have been in that finals every single year. And what I'm going to tell all that's listening right now, if you want to go and listen to the Grand Nationals, it's posted on YouTube, Grand Nationals Senior Division Finals. Go to the Grand Nationals Senior Division Preliminaries 2024, 2023, 2022. Go back and listen to Hunter Wallis call. If you want to know how to make a cut in the Grand Nationals, call. I'm not saying you got to sound like you, Hunter, or anything like that, but I'm saying your confidence, your sounds, how you present, your sound qualities are all. I'm gonna venture to say you've been in the top 2 or 3 every year. Not only made the cut, but top 2 or 3 callers in that 40 or 50 person preliminary round.
Jeez.
Your presentation is just kind of, it kind of goes back to the cadence thing for me. Presentation and cadence go hand in hand. You definitely don't want to just get up there, and I would say presentation is kind of more how you actually put the entire calling sequence together. Your cadence will be more or less, how fast you run your yelps, back to back. Your presentation is kind of the whole overall, if you're doing a fly down cackle, and you add some tree yelps into it and then get a little bit more excited before you actually fly down. That's kind of more of the presentation thing. That's the thing that pretties it up and just makes it an overall, more realistic, sequence. And that's something that'll, especially nowadays, probably get you a lot more points.
So
you're
painting a picture.
You're painting a picture. So Hunter, I've got a call here and I've got it wet. You're in a situation with your mic. So you all know we would have Hunter call, but it blows the mic out. So I'm going to use a call here in the studio, but I want to use an example of what Hunter was just explaining. Say like just a plain hen yelp. So if you just did the plain hen yelp without adding the presentation to paint the picture, it would sound like this. Add presentation to it to gain scores on stage. You would do the plain hen yelp like this. Is that what we're talking about, Hunter?
Absolutely. And I'm glad you did that because that's probably way better than I could do it, Steve.
Oh, yeah, right.
But
He just wanted a call.
I just wanted to call with Hunter Wallis.
absolutely, man. I think that, anything like that, just the little stuff matters so much, your overall presentation. And as we all know now, with the scenarios, this year they didn't do it, but the last couple of years they've done the scenarios in the finals. There's an actual presentation score in that, which is kind of a whole nother topic. But, presentation, even in just a regular calling format where you have your 5 or 6, straight up compulsory calls, a presentation to me is huge. And I think especially when you have so many good overall sounding callers nowadays, any type of little bit of presentation that you add in there just to butter it up a little bit and make yourself stand out, as we said before, it's key. There's no doubt about it.
So real quick, you mentioned about so much the competition is it's not so much it's more it's harder. It's just there's more callers that are at that higher level.
Absolutely.
When your Uncle Mark and myself and Walter Parrott and Paul Butsky and all the old, I used to be with the old group.
Those Longbeard legends.
Now I'm with the new group. But when we used to call, there was Hunter, there was probably about 10, 12, 15 callers. If they showed up, that was the callers you had to worry about. Now it could be 20, 25, 30, 40 of them. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, the prelims at the Grand Nationals, man, I feel bad for those judges because it is so neck and neck. And there are so many guys that are it's crazy. I mean, if you listen to even the prelims, you listen to the 2024 prelims and you listen to the 2010 prelims, just the difference in overall sound for every one of these guys, it's so neck and neck, man. It's really incredible. The level that it's at now is truly incredible.
I want to talk about the judges for a second. So I know, when I was growing up and going to all the turkey calling competitions with Dad and you and Mark and you guys, and just as a kid, every once in a while, Terry used to be a judge for the contest as well. And so I remember just kind of the conversations amongst the callers kind of behind the scenes was a lot of conversation about judging. And, from Terry's perspective, he would typically know which callers were which, right? I think you guys, your reputation precedes you, and a lot of times the judges, obviously they're in the know, they're they know what they're doing, but they know who the callers are a lot of times. Can know who the callers are. Do you feel like that affects you? Do you feel like there's some kind of like, hey, glad handing that you have to do, with those guys and make sure that you're being nice and you're, is there things that almost like you're politically trying to, be the next president here? What do you have to do behind the scenes to make sure that you're not having an ill influence on the judges in any way, shape, or form?
Well, from a personal standpoint, Hunter knows this because I was a judge the first year that the judges actually faced the callers.
Oh, they do?
No, they don't anymore. They tried it a few years. Didn't work that great. But I actually faced the judges at Grand National Finals and scored them and saw who was calling. You can't let whether you know or have an idea of who it is affect your score. If you're not hearing real live turkey and things that check the boxes, you're not going to score it. Whether I know it's Hunter or whether I know it's Matt Van Sice or anybody else that's up there calling, I'm going to score it how I hear it.
I totally agree. I almost think that if they know who it is, especially if you're one of the higher up callers like Van Sice, they're almost looking more for you to make a mistake than not make a mistake. So it almost keeps you at that much higher of a level that you got to keep yourself from making any mistakes at all. I don't think so much as far as being a nice guy makes any difference. I think when you're a judge up there, at least in the right frame of mind, you just totally have to score it, whether you think it sounds like a turkey or if it doesn't sound like a turkey. I agree with Steve totally.
Do you find that some judges lean a certain direction as far as what they are looking for, what they like? Oh, this, I know this
Kiki was great or whatever.
Well,
I think, I think everybody has a little bit of a different sound that they like. We all have that kind of, when we're trying to get the right sound, we all kind of have that one hen envisioned in our mind. And the thing about turkeys that's great is almost every one of them, no two really sound totally the same. So as far as a judging aspect, you have to keep your eyes open and your ears open to the right thing that's going to sound all the way like a turkey in every aspect. But it's kind of, I don't know where I'm going with this one, but it's.
Well, let me just segue into judges should be diverse and not listen for one. You as a caller, Hunter Wallis, Matt Van Sice, Josh Rosenbacher, Jesse Martin, some of the top callers we're talking about, you as a caller key in on certain sounds to make it your own sound. You're trying to copy a certain hen. As a judge, judges need to be diversified and know that different hens sound different. Every human has a different voice pattern, and every turkey has a little bit different sound pattern. Their rhythms are the same, their cadences are the same usually, but their sound patterns can change.
The connection back to the hunting side of things, I'm curious, with someone that spends so much time thinking and listening to hens and just turkey vocalizations in general, have you ever heard a vocalization that a bird made that you're like, I've never heard that before? That's the craziest thing.
Man, I would say almost every year that happens. There's something that you learn almost every time you go to the woods, and that's one of my favorite things about actually going out and turkey hunting is hearing the different hens and hearing all the different sounds that they make. And I would say almost every time I go out, or every year anyway, there's something new that I take away from it that this hen did, as far as the way she ran her series of yelps or how she ran her cuts together, or just a totally new sound that I've never really heard before. I hear that all the time, and you're just always learning. Every time you're out there, you learn something new, which is so cool.
Do you ever, I know, you film your hunts and stuff like that. Do you ever go back and listen back to a hen's, calling sequence and then try to mimic that or add that into your competition calling, or do you take it to that level, or is there
Absolutely.
any kind of correlation there?
Yeah. Sometimes I'll go back and listen to stuff, or just go on YouTube and listen to different hens. For me personally, I kind of get into a routine. If I'm listening to one turkey, I feel like it goofs me up a little bit. You'll see a lot of guys backstage at the Grand Nationals or any contest. They'll have headphones on and, be listening to turkeys. For me personally, that doesn't seem to work as well. I'd rather just kind of, figure out the way I'd like to run things and go with it from there. I think sometimes just listening to a hen might get my cadence off a little bit. So for me personally, it doesn't work, but you'll see guys doing that all the time. And I think, for a lot of people, it probably does work great.
Pretty interesting. So we've talked about the competition side, and we're kind of segueing into the hunting side. Is there any kind of direct correlation to something that, as you've perfected it for the calling circuit, that really drives, a longbeard wild in the woods, for you? Is there something that it's like, hey, this sequence, when I make it, they really hammer, is there anything that correlates from one to the other?
From one to the other, I would say, obviously, as we all know, when you have a turkey that's really cranked up and you cut hard at them and get them to, start screaming, gobbling, that's something that, like you're cutting of an excited hen in a contest is obviously going to get a turkey ripping. But for me personally, I think in the turkey woods, something that kills more turkeys than anything is really, really pretty soft stuff. You get a turkey super cranked up. That's fun to do. There's no doubt about it. And in certain situations, that's great. And that's what you need to do. But I think cranking down on them at first and then converting all your stuff into soft stuff, almost like, she's kind of lost a little bit of interest. She's still there, but she's lost a little bit of interest. Man, for me personally, that turns more turkeys inside out than anything else I can think of.
So we were talking about that with Bo Brooks. And I was just an Alabama hunter, just came back from Mississippi and Alabama, and killed turkeys in both states. Didn't see a lot of turkeys drop on that trip, but still had some success. One of the turkeys that I got in Alabama, when I do this, you'll believe this. This is all I ever did to this turkey. I'm gonna give the entire. Now I did maybe a little more than I'm gonna give right here from fly down time to actually pulling the trigger, but this is all I did with this Alabama turkey. That was it. I mean, that was all I gave. That was the volume, the pitch. That's all I gave to that turkey, because he never gobbled. One time in a roost, I roosted him the night before to a fly-up cackle. He gobbled at it, so I knew he was there. The next morning, it got almost completely light, and he never gobbled. So I gave that little soft yelp that I just gave. He gobbled, and another one gobbled. They flew down, had hens with them, and all I did was that little soft calling to not imitate that, not intimidate those hens, and those hens worked their way right to me, and I got one. They didn't gobble. They didn't gobble 3 times.
Yeah, and you know, anybody that's chased turkeys in the South, especially Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, for whatever reason, man, these Easterns down here could be super hard-headed sometimes. So you got to really be light with them, in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, so many times, man, you know, a lot of, you know, you'll go out and you'll hear hens doing crazy stuff, but a lot of times in the woods, there'll be hens that fly down and don't even really make a noise at all. So it comes down to being as real as you can possibly be. And you know, the scenario that you just played out was just so real that those turkeys work their way up in there to you. It
is pretty interesting. Both guys said the same thing.
The close in game.
Yeah. And you kind of wonder if there's a lot of guys out there that are overcalling, you know, or just like to hear the cutting, or, you know, hear the way it sounds when they're doing it, and they kind of overdo it. Is that flaring up, you know, a bunch of turkeys, that's spooking a bunch of turkeys because of it? I just wonder.
Without, and I don't want to dive all the way back into competition calling, but and Hunter knows what I'm going to say right here, without naming a name, but a top caller in this industry right now, one you've competed against. You?
No, you keep going. We're just
drop it.
Yeah, say the names.
I'm not going to name the name. We were talking about this particular person getting back into making cuts and in the finals and their chances of winning. And I flat told him, if you take your whole program, how you present on stage, and cut the loud calling in half and do half of it soft calling, you'll be back up there. And I think, Hunter, you'll agree, that's what really is the most impressive, not only to judges, but also the real life.
Less is more.
Is it that, does it take more control to have, is it harder to do the soft calling? Like the soft calling to me is more of a, that's kind of like a finer technique that takes a little bit of time to learn how to do. What do you guys think?
I think that, you know, fine tuning the soft calling is definitely harder. Anybody can throw a mouth call in, and once you're able to make noise on it, you know, typically your louder noises are going to be easier to produce.
That's where I'm at.
Now your soft stuff, number one, is harder to make. You know, it's really harder to make super soft sounds, and it's even harder to make super soft realistic sounds. So mastering that is something that I think everybody needs to try to do, especially anybody that's hunting, because you know, as we said, I feel like that soft stuff is just so killer, and it definitely takes a while to get that control, that volume control, and figuring out the right pitches and the amount of air you need to pour into the call, which most people find that you really don't need much air at all. It's just, honestly, it's kind of the way you form your lips could muff that sound a little bit, just enough to get those super soft tree yelps or bubble clucks or anything like that. I mean, Steve, would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. I would suggest, if you're using a mouth call, it's easier to tone it down like on a slate call, but on a mouth call, how you tone it down and how I get those clear high notes, I don't know how you do it, Hunter, but I do what I call a key yelp. So I'm getting that high whistle sound, and I'm yelping with it. That's how I'm getting that real soft, clear yelp. It's just basically almost, Hunter, like the mechanics of whistling, only you're yelping while in that whistle, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's mostly, for me, especially that super soft yelping is just all front end. And when I mean front end, it would be before it's that keyok, that top end, that key, as you would say. And for me, it's just, I think a great tip is I always, when I'm doing those super soft tree calls or just soft yelps, I always get my lips a little bit tighter. And like I said, that just kind of muffles the sound, and it makes it easier for me anyway. I mean, I'm sure there's 1,000 ways to do it, but for me anyway, just kind of tightening up your lips makes it a lot easier to produce those super soft yelps.
Hunter, real quick, again, stage and woods. I notice on stage, and again, big fan of what you do on stage, and you're in the woods. You use a lot of, more than most callers. You seem to use the same call. Is that true, or am I missing something here?
No, it's 100% true. I'm the type of guy that I like to go up there with one call for a couple different reasons. One is it's a lot easier for me to get through my whole routine without having to switch through a bunch of calls. Another reason is I'm scared of flipping a reed because I'm a bat wing guy, and that's pretty much all I blow is bat wings. You can hand me a V cut and I can make some noises on it, but it's not going to be great. You can hand me a ghost cut and I can't make a sound on a ghost cut, literally. So for me, just being a bat wing guy, I only really need one call, and it makes it so much easier on stage, especially because I don't have to be fumbling through. You'll see a lot of guys that are doing a tree up or anything like, keying and they're switching out calls left and right. And for me, that's just, nothing but chaos. So that helps me a lot. And man, I think a lot of people have trouble with their calling because they're not calling on the right cut. I really and truthfully do. You gotta, especially if you're somebody just getting into it in a new turkey hunter or turkey caller, you gotta go out there and try at least 5 or 6 different cuts and find the one that's right for you.
Absolutely.
Because you could, like I said, you could hand me a shipwreck, a combo, a split V, and I can make some sounds on them, but not nearly the sounds that I can produce on a bat wing. So going through and trying a couple different cuts and different breed selections is huge, especially once you find that cut. Like if you are we'll say a split V guy, once you find the right split breed for you, you just kind of go through, whether it be a couple different companies or a couple different types of latex, and then you go from there. So once you get your cut, I think, or the cut that is best for you, you just kind of play with a bunch of different material, and then you're going to be able to find what works out best for you, because we all do it so differently. A lot of guys on the Grand National, some guys blow a ghost cut the entire time, and like I said, for me, I can't make a sound on a ghost cut. So it's interesting to see how everybody does it a little bit different.
I find this part fascinating because you're a novice, Tim, myself, I'm lumping you in with me.
Yeah, no, bring it.
I wouldn't have no clue. It's like, here's the call. I actually texted Paul Butsky maybe 3-4 weeks ago, and I'm like, hey, what is the easiest call for me to try to make a sound relatively close to a turkey? He's like, they're all pretty similar right now in regards to the ease of use and running them. Mm-hmm. And so I think I'm on this ghost, it's a ghost cut, that signature series that Mark has.
Yeah.
Tongue? No, is it ghost tongue?
That's a bat wing.
Bat wing?
Yeah.
So I'll have to go back and look to see what, see what, which cut that was or what they're calling it, the DoD signature series. But I would have no idea to figure out which call is the best call.
That's the same cut he was talking about. And Hunter, I am the exact same way as you, only I like a cutter or modify. I actually designed a modified cutter, and all I did is come over further with the cut and make that tongue flat instead of pointed. And I call it the modified cutter. It's my design cut, but it's what I run the best. So that's why I run it.
You guys, you talk about the different type of latex and the different cuts. I mean, is there something, and it doesn't matter the company or who makes it, is there something that's like, hey, for a beginner, this is the type of cut that, or what he's saying is, no, you got to try 4 or 5 different cuts, different latexes until the one that fits you best, that you can make the best sounds, works.
Well, 100 expound on this, but my advice is there is no beginner type call. A call will do everything you want it to do. And so even an advanced type call, multi-reed call, triple reed call, 3.5 reed is just as easy to learn to blow. In fact, easier to learn to blow, in my opinion, than a single reed or a double reed. Hunter?
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. From doing it for, quite a few years, not nearly as many as Steve, but, just working with people at shows and having them ask me what I recommend. I mean, there's always something I always gear people toward a bat wing, and that's just because it's my personal preference. I would say for a beginner, I think an easier call to blow is definitely a 2-reed. Just me personally, I would steer somebody towards some type of 2-reed. Cut, I don't think that matters when you're first starting out. I wouldn't go with anything crazy like you see some of these, just nuts, cuts that are just out of this world. I wouldn't go with anything like that. I'd start with either a split V, a bat wing, anything like that. I think that it's so different for everybody. Matt, you might love a split V, and Steve, like you said, you kind of like that cutter, and I like a bat wing. So there's so many different cuts out there is the nice thing, that I just think you have to try every single one of them until you really figure out what is best for you.
That's a good point.
Good news is they're relatively cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
How about
100%.
Tim? How about what cut do you use?
I use that DoD Batwing.
But I thought they were called this, like the tongue cutter or something like that, right?
Yeah,
I could be totally
like,
wrong. I'll have to look it up now.
It looks like a Batwing to me.
I'm not good enough to have a real preference. Like as long as I can get it to turn over, I'm happy. I don't have very high specs for a mouth call.
We're terrible.
So Hunter,
Not that good.
I also use a Batwing as well, but mostly. So there it is, right there, if you can see it. But I use a Batwing for my clucking and purring because I get a higher pitch with it, like this. I can get that higher pitch that I'm wanting out of a purr. Now that's just for competing. I can purr on a regular mouth call for hunting.
Sure.
So this is called the Drury Outdoor Signature Ghost Tongue Mouth Call, is what it's called.
Okay.
So you're saying it's a Batwing?
It is a Batwing cut. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
They call it the Ghost Tongue
Okay.
for whatever reason.
So it's a ghost tongue.
Scary.
Is the name of the cut. But
Yeah.
That's fine. Yeah.
So, but they have, like you're talking about the different cuts that you said something about one on the side, and they have all these different cuts, but I wouldn't know the difference of. Actually, this is the first one I pulled out of the pack.
Hey, what do you go?
I
It's a
stuck
winner.
with this one. You're telling me I should try the other three.
Well, and as Hunter said, and no matter what call company, one of the things about the National Wild Turkey Federation convention that I think a lot of people miss if they don't go, and by the way, 72,000 people
It's incredible.
showed up to it this year, most ever, is on the exhibit floor. There are
A billion
companies out there. Go by, do yourself a favor, go to NWTF convention and spend a weekend and just go and make it your turkey weekend to figure out what call you want to use, because you'll find it there.
It is pretty incredible.
I like to try them out there at the booth.
So does everybody else.
Yeah.
What do you say about that, Hunter?
Yeah, that's the best way to do it, man. I mean, you look at them, most of them are between 10 and 12 bucks. So I think you take $100 bill, go out there and buy a bunch of mouth calls, and I can almost guarantee you out of those 10 or 12 or however many mouth calls you get, there's going to be at least one in that pack that you like. So you find that one that you like and kind of go from there with it.
And here's the move. You got to drive there. You say it's a date weekend, because it's usually around Valentine's. You bring your
that's
significant
true.
other, and then the entire road trip home, you test out all $100 worth of calls in
Honey,
the truck.
let me know what you think.
and really piss her off.
Get like a divorce.
So Hunter, I'm going to segue back to turkey hunting. How many different states do you typically hunt every spring?
I'll hunt anywhere between usually 10 to 12, I'd say, every spring.
What
Slacker.
states are you lined up? You've hunted so far and you're lined up for this year.
We started out in Florida. I'm in Georgia right now. Going to head over to Alabama for a few days, Mississippi, North Carolina, Virginia, Ohio, PA, New York, Wisconsin, and probably Maine if I get the time to run up there late.
Just keep going north.
Just keep going, man. Keep following the seasons as they open and close.
So you will go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, so if you've been to all those states, or you're going to all those states, you're used to going to all those states, what's the turkey population like as you kind of, as you're bouncing around? Is it pretty stable? Is it in decline from what you've been accustomed to? Like, how you feeling about that part of it?
I think it's definitely pretty stable. Honestly, I would say as far as last year and going into this year, I think it's climbing back up. I really do. I mean, you saw it maybe 2020, 2021, where it was definitely noticeably less. Even around my house in PA, you could tell that they were hurting a little bit. But now, as far as I've seen, man, I really do think that they're starting to climb back up, which is phenomenal.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot that we've talked about it at nauseum. We've even had the guys from the MDC on, the Missouri Department of Conservation, a couple episodes ago, which if you haven't listened to that, it's worth checking out, because they changed our regs quite a bit this year. And we have all day hunting and on private land and a few other changes of the fall season. But in general, it seems like there's a lot more people doing predator control, trapping, those types of things. A lot of people that are doing prescribed burns and things that help the habitat on their farms, and then just in general, I think groups like Turkeys for Tomorrow and the NWTF are doing great work to help kind of that. what was going on in the 70s, and to help the turkey population. We're almost in a new era of that, it seems like to me.
And Hunter, what I'm hearing a lot from game experts, biologists, and this is information that they knew years ago, that in areas where turkeys are introduced, the population goes off the charts high, and then all of a sudden something will come along, and whether it be predation, bad series of bad nesting, years of bad nesting results, and then it'll drop and hit almost rock bottom. But then when it comes back up, it never gets back to that level it was when it was at its first peak. And then it'll kind of level off and hit its peaks and valleys after that, like a lower algorithm. So I think a lot of states are experiencing that right now.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that, man. I think you look at a state like Oklahoma, from a lot of people that I've heard in Oklahoma, you go back to 2016, 2017, it was just a crazy population. There'd be flocks of 200 roosting together. And now you go to 2019, 2020, and those flocks of 200 are down to 20.
Yes.
How do you explain that? Now it sounds like they're on their way back. So I would agree totally. I think it's a number of different things kind of all colliding at once is my opinion on it. But there's so many different opinions out there. And, as far as I can see, I really do think it's starting to climb back up. So hopefully it won't be as big of a concern as it was the last couple of years here. But I think we all have to do our part and try to make sure that we maintain the population. There's no doubt about that.
I think that's the key. We got to stay diligent. You can't take it for granted that it's always going to be this way. So, Tim, before we jump into the question of the day, the wildlife word of the day, I wanted to real quick touch on two things. First of all, we talked about it briefly last week. The Colonel and the Fox documentary that Mossy Oak did, it's out. It's available now over on the Mossy Oak YouTube channel. I would highly suggest folks go over and check that out, especially as we talk about turkey population.
Great timing for it.
Absolutely. And, it kind of dives into Mr. Fox, which is Toxie's father. And then it dives into Colonel Tom Kelly, who's the author of the cult classic 10th Legion. It talks about how they, on separate journeys, kind of were very instrumental in helping revitalize the turkey population. And it's just really well done. Daniel, Neil, David Hawley, all those guys down there did a fantastic job. So go check that out. And then the other piece of note that I want to add, DeerCast. Right now, the guys are running a special for our turkey season. So it's saved 30% off on DeerCast April 1st through the 15th. And it's not just for deer, guys. It works really well for turkeys.
Yes.
Coondog the other day had a really good video talking about how he's using it. Brian Weiss just had a really good one. So check that out. It's 30% off your entire first year. It's for new DeerCast users only. So just a heads up there. And so that does it for that side, Tim.
Heck
we want to dive into the next thing.
The question of the day.
All right. So the question of the day is brought to you by Blocker Outdoors Finisher Turkey Series, built specifically for the avid turkey hunter. And we had Kevin Strong from Blocker a couple weeks ago. So check that episode out. All right. So this question is from the Rack Pack, the Facebook group. Steve, you're in the Rack Pack, aren't you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You better say it. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So Tyler Brown over there, he says, when you get access to a new property, what is the best approach to determining turkey population and patterns? In my case, the property is almost all woods, a mixture of hardwoods and pines, so no fields to observe. Okay. Hunter,
Great
what do you
question.
think here on the best way to determine turkey population and pattern on a new piece of dirt? Mostly timber.
Can you say that? Can you say that one more time? Sorry, it kind of cut out.
Yeah. So what Tyler's asking is, what's your best approach to determining a turkey population and pattern for a new piece of dirt that's mostly hardwoods? It's a mixture of hardwoods and pines. So it's not like you can go glass a field, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a key there would be nowadays with cell cameras, man. You can put 4 or 5 cell cameras on that property. I mean, if it's legal in your state, in the off season, you could pour out some corn or some scratch or whatever you want to call it, and just kind of determine your population and figure out in your mind how many you'd like to take off the place or not take off the place. And I would say that cameras would be the biggest thing there. And obviously just walking around the woods, seeing what kind of sign you got, if there's a lot of scratching, if there's lots of tracks, that's obviously going to tell you kind of what's there. But if you put 3 or 4 cameras out, that should tell you kind of what you're working with. Or you go out and listen in the springtime, see how many you hear gobble. There's a number of ways to do it, but cell cameras nowadays, man, are huge for not just deer. Obviously, they're great for turkeys as well.
In my opinion, you just picked the top 3 choices right there.
Yeah.
Cameras, boots on the ground, and listening for turkeys. Mm-hmm. Those 3.
Listening on a morning when they're hammering, you get, I guess you don't always know if it's Jake's. I mean, there's ways to tell, but you don't always know if it's a Jake or if it's a Longbeard until you see it. But just to hear how many different gobbles and kind of coursing where they're at, which is one of the things where DeerCast or a mapping application does help.
Drop some waypoints.
Mm-hmm. And then you kind of have an idea of roughly how many different birds you felt like are on your piece or near your piece. Mm-hmm. So definitely, I think it's a great way to go about it.
Yeah. There's something about scouting birds, hearing them and kind of being like, okay, I know where you are. It's game on tomorrow morning.
Roosting a bird is, like you said, roost is not always roasted, but man, it is. That's a
sure gives you a head start.
Hell yeah. For sure.
Fun.
All right. What's next?
Okay. The Wildlife Word is brought to you by Hunter Specialties. Check out the full line of DoD signature turkey calls. It's designed by 6-time world champ Mark Drury and approved by the Drury Outdoors team. All right, we're talking about a disease this week. What is histomoniasis? Is it A, an overactive growth hormone that causes unusually large spurs? Beard rot? C, a parasitic infection caused by a protozoan, Histomonas meleagritis, which can affect turkeys, causing weight loss, diarrhea, and death? Or D, the reason Tim reads everything verbatim on the show sheet. Literally everything.
That was in parentheses.
Literally.
Okay. All right. So we let the guest go first for a reason because I usually don't know the answer. Have you any idea what the answer is here, Hunter?
I have absolutely no idea.
So take just like you would take a test. Guess.
Yeah, that's about how it was for me too. I'll go with. You kind of broke up with the one, but I heard diarrhea, so I'll go with the diarrhea one. I'll go with C.
Safe bet.
I'll try that.
Yep.
That's right. Always safe bet.
I agree with Hunter.
You always got to go with that one. That was just my gut when I heard diarrhea, so I'm going to go with that.
The answer is C. I agree with Hunter. I'm saying the answer is C. I don't know if it is.
I would typically say this sounds correct, but usually these guys, the way they write it, like the more in depth and detailed, they're screwing with you some way, some shape.
Hate these guys.
Yeah. You are these guys typically, not Jim. But anyway, so I'm gonna go out of left field here and say it is
overactive growth hormone, beard rot, diarrhea. Death.
I'm gonna go with beard rot. B. What the hell?
All right. Well, it is actually the parasitic infection that causes weight loss, diarrhea, and death.
All right,
Hunter, we got it right, buddy.
I overthought it.
I hope I'm on stage with you next year in the finals is all I can tell you.
You could work in like a turkey dying of diarrhea into your painting the full picture.
Regardless, it's not a good thing for your turkeys to have.
Or anybody.
Yeah, I don't know.
Exactly.
Unless you want to drop a few
Man,
pounds.
I got one hell of a story. I'm gonna not tell it though, but I'm pretty sure you know it, of a certain person related to me that had a good,
I do know this story.
You know this story. This is an off-air story. Yes. I was a young child being guided by one of the best.
And apparently scarred by it too.
All right. So,
All right.
shout outs. We don't have any shout outs this week. We didn't last week. We need some new shout outs. So all you got to do is go over to wherever you listen to the podcast or view the podcast. And so, like, for instance, if you listen to it on Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating, preferably 5-star, and leave us a shout out and we'll read it here on air.
Please.
And we just ask that you subscribe and share these episodes with your buddies. And, is that too much to ask, Tim?
I don't think so.
Me neither.
For a free show.
That's right. All right. So last but not least, we have the new Rack Pack members. I mentioned it a minute ago. It's a private Facebook group. All you got to do is search 100% Wild Rack Pack. It comes up, answer a couple questions. You're in. It's awesome, man. It's a great community.
Good times.
About now, this time of year, we're going to start seeing a bunch of turkey pictures, hero pictures, any questions you got, these guys will answer it, and some of them might make fun of you.
To everyone who put in an offer on the taxidermy turkey, it has been sold.
Ah, it's sold. I don't see it anymore, actually. Did it get thrown away?
I think the owner came to get it.
Did he?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So new Rack Pack members every week. I read these names every week. I butcher them every week. There's a fake one in here. So we got Tyler Barr. We got Chip Yunt. Wonder if that's, isn't there a baseball player, famous baseball player?
Could be.
Yeah.
Should be if there
Robin,
isn't.
yeah.
Robin. Yeah. Okay. Larry Longbeard. That seems fake to me. Larry Longbeard.
I'd say Larry Longbeard's the fake one.
Mark Beck. We had Mark on
Hey,
the
Mark.
podcast. It hadn't aired yet, but I asked him if he was in the Rack Pack, and he said he was going to join. So he did indeed join.
By the way, all of you are so bored you have to join a Rack Pack, but that's okay.
Hey.
Good.
What the hell, Steve? All right, and the
What's this
last
guy's
one
deal?
here we got, yeah,
What's this guy's deal?
Hughie Linus, Hughie, Hughie.
Hughie Lewis in the news.
I think it's Hughie Linus.
Continue with the Rack Pack list.
All right, so that's a lot of show for this week, Tim. What do you think?
Oh, yeah. Man, Hunter, thanks so much for hopping on and jumping on while you're on the road.
Hunter, real quick and short and brief, best advice for a young aspiring turkey caller and hunter. Best advice.
Man, I would say just stick with it. Now you're lucky enough to have so many great tips on YouTube, and you can go online and look up a lot of stuff that, you know, people when I was young, which wasn't long ago at all, I still am young, there wasn't a lot of tips out there or ways to figure it out. Now, man, you can go on YouTube and check out anything. So I think just sticking with it, meeting the right people and practicing, man. Practice. If you want to become a better caller, all you got to do is practice. So just sticking with it, man. Stick with it and watch your YouTube videos and practice your butt off, and you'll probably become something.
Perfect.
Sweet.
I think that's great advice.
Hunter, go get a blizzard.
Hunter, real quick, where can people follow you or find you at?
You can follow me on Instagram. I'm doing a new project now. It's called Rogue Hunts. That's also on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. That's where all of our turkey content airs. So please go check that out. My personal page is on Instagram and Facebook as well. So please come check it out.
All right. Very good. Well, we appreciate your time, and good luck killing some turkeys this spring. Be safe. Identify those targets. Until next time, everybody.
See ya.
Peace out.
Thanks, Hunter.
Thanks, guys.
DeerCast is now supercharged with maps. Get ahead of your game with killer new features like live Doppler radar, wind check out to 5 days, virtual rain gauges, GPS path tracking, and more. Plus, get our 14-day revolutionary DeerCast prediction and access to DeerCast Track. Prep, predict, and pursue with DeerCast.
We're adding new videos every week, so make sure to click that subscribe button and check out all of our amazing content. This episode of DoD TV is brought to you by DeerCast. Prep, predict, and pursue your target buck.